Greetings and welcome. My name is Jake Rayson. I'm a wildlife food forest garden designer, and this is a video for my client for the walled garden. And I wanted to just show some sketches really, because it's easier than working up a CAD file and doing a lot of work on it, and then just by sketching then you can get an idea and to see if it's in the right direction. So the first thing number, where's my finger gone, number one, the first thing is the central kind of feature. So what we've got here, let me see if I can just zoom in quickly. So what we've got here is this is the central pool. This would have been the dipping pond originally in a walled garden, and that's just it's a circular pond. Not sure about the size, like maybe 5 meters diameter, and then there's a path that goes all the way around it. Now, what I would love to add, and I think would be fantastic for wildlife, is a wall. I was thinking of using gabions filled with local stone or rubble, depending on what material is available, and that's fantastic habitat for wildlife. And it's also a sun trap as well. And what would be good to do is to build the seating into the wall itself, and then behind it is a bed, and that would be kind of shaded. More, it's a shaded bed because there'd be a gabion wall in front of it, and then there's a pine tree, possibly a stone pine. Might be too tall, might cast too much of a shadow further back here towards the glass house in the winter months, but it might be okay. I think it's probably going to be okay, but we'll do some measurements on that. So that's the first part. That's just kind of explaining this first kind of central feature. This is like the main kind of focal point for the entire garden. Greetings and welcome to the second part number 2, which is the water feature. The client was talking about having a water feature at the top and around about here. Now, the kind of thing about having, and he wants a rectangular water feature as well. Now, for symmetry, you kind of want to either have two. It's a question of, do you have two separate water features here and here, or do you have like one central one here with a path going around it? Now, it was apparently quite common that it was tried out in a lot of different old walled gardens, of increasing the amount of reflection coming off the water into the glass house to increase the amount of light. So it's quite apparently quite a common feature. So yeah, the kind of question is central or not, and then, or whether you have it one asymmetrical, the one off, or you have two of them. So that's a kind of bit of an open question. I kind of like the symmetry of having a rectangular in front here and a path going around, so the yellow is the path. And this is the third part, which is the annual and perennial vegetable and Mediterranean and herb garden. So this is a kind of hold on a second, northeast quadrant. So it gets a southwest light. And I'm not sure about the radial design of the beds or the kind of, I like the curve of the path because it kind of fits in with the circular shape, and then also the grid as well, but not sure how practical that is. And if you are going to have it, whether you're best off having north-south facing beds, because just in terms of growing vegetables, you really need you can grow vegetables, obviously you can grow vegetables in any shaped bed, but if you're growing, particularly if you're growing annual vegetables, you kind of want them to have them in regular beds because they're easier to weed and they're easier to hoe. So yeah, I'm not sure if that should be north-south or if a radial layout like that is okay. And this just indicates there's paths there as well. Let me just zoom in a little bit. And then rest of the garden, not sure about, big kind of question marks over it just in terms of the layout. This is the Mediterranean area around here. I want to indicate there's a seating area, and this is kind of full sun. So like for social, it kind of makes sense to use this area because it's in full sun, it gets full sun, but you want to have some shade as well. Careful of that tree because you don't want to cast shade across the other parts of the garden. I'm thinking of something like a strawberry tree, but something kind of evergreen that does give you some protection, because this will be absolutely blasted with heat in the summer. but without shedding out anything else. So possibly utilizing this corner and then doing something with the paths. I kind of don't want to. I want to keep. Yeah, kind of want to keep the original path shape, but possibly put the tree up here in the corner and then have seating area underneath or here. I think there's enough space. I kind of imagine, and I say Mediterranean. That covers a whole. That's not really a design. This is looking at access points, but there's an awful lot more that you could do. Obviously, there's an awful lot more you can do with this kind of section here. Okay, so that's the third part. And this is the fourth part number 4, which is I just wanted to put in a walkway. What on earth are they called? Not pergola. An arbour, I think it's called, technical term. But possibly just on this side. But I just think this is the kind of rough. The location of the house is on the east side, so this would be like the main entrance. But it's quite nice just to have you've come in to the garden, like a possible arbour there. And this is the 5th element going part of the garden I wanted to talk about, which is the Japanese garden up in this area here, on the northwest quadrant. And it's kind of interesting. So, the whole kind of point of Japanese garden. What is the point of a Japanese garden? But the various elements in a kind of Japanese garden, but it's having a focal point for it, which is traditionally is like a tea house, which used to be in some schools of Japanese gardening. This was quite a rustic, quite a very, very basic hut. It doesn't have to be anything fancy to drink for the tea ceremony. And the kind of the story, one of the stories that's built up around Japanese tea gardens is that it's a journey. It's not a direct journey to the tea house. It's a winding path, and it's not obvious. And there's a lot of waiting and taking your time to get there. So what I've done here is to connect the water with this pond here, and to provide some sort of connection rather than just being standalone. Also the opportunity to have a bridge as well, which is a very kind of common element that you're stepping over and then into the land. And the whole point of the positioning of this, firstly, this is slightly raised where the tea house would be, so it'll be above the body of water here, which also means that you can see it from various points, but you can't actually get to it. So when you come in, you can see it, but you can't get to it. The actual entrance is all the way over here and snuck over here. And then the path is protected, the actual path. So you don't see the path, you just see the tea house, but you don't know how to get there. So the path is protected on this side by low kind of foliage, and on this side by low foliage. But then the tea house itself is slightly raised. So that's the idea of some sort of kind of curving, shaped path like that. Yeah, that's that part there. This is the 6th part. This is kind of really very kind of very quick basic sketch. This scribbled down here. A woodland area is the vague Woodland Glade. So I just quickly put some paths in. I think it's actually quite an interesting idea. So there will be productive trees in there, edible crops in there, and it will be stuff that doesn't need so much pruning. It's a bit more wild. So this area will be an orchard, and I say orchard in the broadest sense. It'll have nut trees and cultivated fruit trees, but this will be more accessible really because you want to have access for pruning, whereas this section will have things like medlars and hawthorns and trees, cornus, kusa, Chinese dogwood, that kind of stuff that doesn't really need pruning, so you can really let it do its own thing. The other side of this is a continuation really, and it's not I don't really want you to look at I don't really want you to look at the pattern so much, the actual design as the idea behind it, but it's this meandering sense here, and I really want to combine it with, so you have paths going in, so you're making access easy, but then you're also disguising it as well, so it's kind of a bit of a strange mix. And the kind of the idea from the Japanese garden is that it's like it's meandering paths, and then there's a glade that you come across, and it's not obvious, and it's like a really kind of nice secret space within this more wilder, less cultivated, less pruned sort of area. And there's various access points, and you can take little shortcuts and nip in and go out. So I kind of like that. That's kind of nice. That's a bit kind of looser. So that's the wilder woodland glade area. That is the southwest quadrant. And welcome back to the seventh part, which is the orchard area. Again, not much detail really. Going with the kind of windbreaks, which I actually kind of want to continue around this side as well. So protecting the rest of the garden, and these areas, these will be the kind of more regularly pruned fruit trees. So they'll be the more cultivated fruit trees. Also, there's an area for for star watching and a fire pit. So I've kind of done this croissant shaped thing here. Now what I'll do, again, this is just coming back to the Japanese garden. There's going to be quite a lot of soil you're doing this excavation. Firstly, you need to make sure that you can actually get the diggers in. You'll be able to get a mini digger in fine, no problem, but and possibly like a mini dumper truck as well. But you want to keep as much material on site as possible, and this is for the excavations for the different ponds, and it's also for, if depending upon which route you take. If we go down the route of scraping the grass off, then there'll be an awful lot of grass sods as well to do something with, and actually creating shapes and forming shapes with soil is actually a really good way. So you could form a kind of crescent shaped protected area for the fire pit, possibly even like a bank, like some sort of it's not an auditorium, like an outdoor theatre, that type of thing, where you're creating an actual kind of private protected space, but still with kind of views outside. And so that's the kind of general ideas for the kind of more orchard area. And as I said before, these are just kind of rough ideas. They're not at all kind of finished, but just to more talk about the kind of functions of different areas. I'll quickly do trees in a minute. Okay.